Ignoring someone is often framed as passive behavior, but psychologically it can carry an active and powerful message. When a person is suddenly deprived of attention, feedback, or acknowledgement, the human brain tends to interpret that absence as a threat to social belonging. Because humans are deeply wired for connection, silence can feel louder than words. This reaction is not accidental. It is rooted in attachment theory, social conditioning, and the fear of rejection that most people carry at some level. From a psychological perspective, attention works as a form of validation. When attention is removed without explanation, the ignored individual may begin to question their worth, behavior, or social standing. This internal questioning can lead to anxiety, overthinking, and emotional dependency. The manipulative power of ignoring lies in its ambiguity, because the lack of clear information forces the mind to fill in the gaps, often in self-blaming ways. Silence also disrupts emotional regulation. When communication is cut off, the nervous system may shift into a state of hypervigilance. The ignored person may replay past interactions repeatedly, searching for mistakes or hidden meanings. This mental loop can create a sense of urgency to fix the situation, even when no clear wrongdoing exists. In this way, ignoring can subtly shift control to the person withholding engagement. Another psychological layer involves intermittent reinforcement. When ignoring is used inconsistently, alternating between warmth and coldness, it can deepen emotional attachment rather than weaken it. The unpredictability triggers dopamine-driven reward circuits, similar to gambling behavior. The ignored individual may become increasingly focused on regaining attention, mistaking relief for affection. Ignoring can also exploit power imbalances. In workplaces, friendships, or romantic dynamics, the person with more perceived social value may use silence to assert dominance. The lack of response becomes a statement of superiority, implying that the other person is not worthy of time or explanation. This dynamic often operates quietly, making it difficult to challenge directly. Culturally, ignoring is sometimes normalized as setting boundaries or protecting peace, which can blur ethical lines. While boundaries are healthy, manipulation occurs when silence is used not for self-care but to provoke distress or compliance in another person. The difference lies in intent and transparency, which are often absent in manipulative ignoring. Emotionally, being ignored can activate childhood wounds related to abandonment or neglect. This makes the strategy particularly effective against individuals with anxious attachment styles. The manipulator may not consciously understand this mechanism, yet still benefit from its effects. The ignored person may regress emotionally, becoming more submissive or accommodating. Ignoring also allows plausible deniability. Because no direct harm is visible, the manipulator can deny malicious intent. Statements like, "I was just busy," or "I needed space," can invalidate the emotional impact on the other person. This gaslighting effect can further destabilize the ignored individual's confidence in their own perceptions. Over time, repeated exposure to being ignored can erode self-esteem. The person may internalize the silence as proof of unimportance. This internalization can change behavior, making them quieter, more cautious, or overly eager to please. These changes often benefit the manipulator while costing the other person their sense of self. Understanding the psychology behind ignoring is essential not to use it, but to recognize its effects. Awareness allows individuals to differentiate between healthy distance and psychological control. When silence becomes a pattern that induces fear rather than peace, it is no longer neutral behavior but a form of emotional influence. Ignoring functions as a nonverbal assertion of power because it controls the flow of emotional energy. When one person decides when communication happens and when it does not, they dictate the emotional rhythm of the relationship. This asymmetry can quietly establish dominance without confrontation, making it an attractive tool for those who avoid direct conflict. Control through ignoring often relies on uncertainty. The ignored person does not know whether the silence is temporary, intentional, or permanent. This uncertainty can create emotional paralysis, where the individual hesitates to act out of fear of making things worse. The manipulator, meanwhile, maintains emotional distance and leverage. In many cases, ignoring is used to punish without accountability. Instead of addressing an issue openly, the manipulator withdraws engagement, forcing the other person to suffer the consequences without understanding the charge. This indirect punishment can be more distressing than open criticism because it offers no clear path to resolution. Power dynamics are reinforced when the ignored individual begins to chase communication. Reaching out repeatedly, apologizing excessively, or lowering personal boundaries can signal submission. The manipulator may interpret this as confirmation of control, further entrenching the dynamic. What begins as silence can evolve into a long-term imbalance. Ignoring also weaponizes empathy. People who are emotionally attuned or conflict-averse are especially vulnerable because they are more likely to assume responsibility for relational tension. The manipulator benefits from this by doing nothing while the other person does emotional labor for both sides. In social groups, ignoring can function as a form of exclusion. Being left out of conversations, plans, or acknowledgments sends a message of social demotion. Humans are highly sensitive to group belonging, so this tactic can be used to pressure conformity or silence dissent without open confrontation. In romantic contexts, ignoring is often mislabeled as mystery or emotional detachment. While independence can be healthy, strategic withdrawal meant to provoke longing or insecurity crosses into manipulation. The line is crossed when silence is used to extract attention, affection, or obedience rather than to maintain autonomy. Work environments can also become fertile ground for this tactic. A manager or colleague may ignore contributions, messages, or presence to undermine confidence or assert hierarchy. Because professional settings discourage emotional confrontation, the ignored individual may feel trapped, unable to address the behavior directly. The long-term effect of control through ignoring is often emotional exhaustion. The person subjected to it may become hyper-aware of the manipulator's moods and availability, adjusting themselves constantly. This self-abandonment can lead to burnout, resentment, and loss of personal agency. Recognizing ignoring as a power move helps dismantle its influence. When silence is seen not as a reflection of one's worth but as a behavioral choice by another person, its emotional grip weakens. Power thrives in confusion, and clarity is its natural enemy. The emotional impact of being ignored often extends beyond the immediate relationship. Prolonged exposure can shape beliefs about self-worth, communication, and trust. Individuals may begin to expect withdrawal instead of dialogue, normalizing emotional distance even in healthy contexts. Psychologically, ignoring can trigger stress responses similar to social rejection. Increased cortisol levels, sleep disturbances, and intrusive thoughts are not uncommon. The body reacts as if facing a threat, even when the threat is invisible. This makes the experience both confusing and deeply unsettling. One of the most damaging aspects is self-doubt. When there is no feedback, the mind creates narratives to explain the silence. These narratives often skew negative, reinforcing feelings of inadequacy. Over time, this can erode emotional resilience and decision-making confidence. Awareness is the first line of defense. Noticing patterns rather than isolated incidents helps distinguish manipulation from occasional need for space. Consistent silence used after disagreement or as a response to unmet demands is a red flag. Healthy relationships allow for communication even during distance. Emotional grounding techniques can help reduce the internal chaos caused by being ignored. Focusing on observable facts rather than imagined meanings restores mental balance. Silence does not automatically equal guilt, rejection, or failure, even though it may feel that way emotionally. Setting internal boundaries is as important as setting external ones. This means deciding how much emotional energy to invest when communication is absent. Choosing not to chase, over-explain, or self-blame interrupts the manipulative cycle and shifts power back to the individual. Clear, calm communication can also expose the tactic. Stating how silence affects you without accusation forces the other person to either engage honestly or reveal their unwillingness to do so. Either outcome provides valuable information about the relationship's health. Support systems play a crucial role in recovery. Talking to friends, therapists, or trusted peers can counteract the isolating effect of being ignored. External perspectives help reality check distorted self-perceptions that may arise from prolonged silence. Ethically, understanding dark psychological tactics is not about replicating them, but about protection. Knowledge transforms vulnerability into discernment. When people can name what is happening, they are less likely to internalize harm as personal failure. Ultimately, ignoring loses its power when it no longer controls emotional outcomes. Self-validation, emotional literacy, and conscious detachment reduce the effectiveness of silence as a weapon. What thrives on insecurity dissolves in self-awareness.